In this screencast, we will install MongoDB on our Windows machine and ensure that it runs as a Windows service. This would be a multi-step process, so you might want to pause and rewatch portions of this video. So, first head over to mongodb.org and you'll see this green button called Download MongoDB. Click on this button. On the page that appears, you'll see a couple of options that the site gives you for downloading MongoDB. The R2 Plus option, for instance, works well for Windows 8 and Windows 10. The legacy builds work well for Windows 7. Now, if you're using Windows 7, you need to install a hotfix as listed on this site. So make sure you go through the installation procedure in the docs section for more details. Windows XP, however, is not supported anymore. Another thing, you should prefer using the 64-bit version of Windows and consequently the 64-bit version of MongoDB. The 32-bit edition here is limited to database sizes of 2 GB, so it's not scalable for production. Once you've selected an appropriate version, click on the download button and this will download the MSI installer onto your hard drive. Once the download completes, run the installer. Hit next. Accept the license terms, hit next again. And here you can click on the complete option. However, custom lets you see and change the installation path, should you wish to do the same. Make a note of this path where MongoDB would be installed on your machine, as we would be needing this shortly, and this might change based on the version of MongoDB that you are installing. Finally, hit next and click on the install button to begin with the installation. Alright, this completes the first part of the installation procedure, but we are not done yet. We are going to install MongoDB as a Windows service, and for that, a few more steps are required. First up, click on the Windows button and the R key on your keyboard to bring up the Run panel. Here, type CMD because we want to open up the command prompt. But instead of pressing Enter or clicking OK, hit Ctrl, Shift and Enter. This will open up the command prompt in administrator mode, and this is absolutely needed for the following steps. On certain versions of Windows, you should be able to right-click on the Start button, the one with the Windows icon, and in the menu that appears, you will get an option to open the command prompt in admin mode. So either way, we must have the command prompt in admin mode before we can continue, or else you won't be able to install or start MongoDB as a service. What we need to do now is create folders where MongoDB would store all the data that we want to store and a file where MongoDB can write out its log. These are not done by the installer, and this has to be manually done by us. So, at the root on my C drive, I'll create a folder called MongoDB, after which I'll create two subfolders called Data, which is where we'll make Mongo store all its data, and a folder called Log, where a log file would be created. Let's go into the MongoDB folder, and now we'll have to create a configuration file which tells our MongoDB server about the data and log folders. So back in my text editor, I'll create a file at the root in my MongoDB folder called mongod.cfg. This file will be written using the YAML syntax, which is like JSON minus the curly braces. So the first thing that we'll type out here is system log, so that we can set our log file. Follow it up with a colon, and then on the next line, hit the space bar twice to create an indent. It is very important that you do not use tab here, since the YAML syntax uses spaces instead of tabs. So after two spaces, type out destination:file. We are essentially telling Mongo to write out the log to a file that we'll specify instead of the operating system's syslog, which can also be done. Now on the next line, type path : and we'll type out our path to the log folder followed by a reference to a log file. I'm going to call this file mongodb.log. Next up, backspace twice to start a new configuration block and type storage followed by a colon. This is where we'll configure Mongo to store all its data in the data folder that we created earlier. So on the next line, again hit the spacebar twice and type dbpath, where the letter P is in uppercase, followed by a colon and the entire path to the data folder. Do ensure there is no trailing slash at the end. And this creates our basic configuration file, which is needed if you want to set up your MongoDB instance as a Windows service. Once we have this, the last thing to do is to install MongoDB as a service. So back on the prompt, we'll first type out the path to the Mongo daemon executable like so. Do note that this path may vary on your machine, so please double check before you type it in as shown. We are typing this out in double quotes, and this is important as well. Now put a space, then type --config, again a space, and within double quotes, we'll type out the path to the config file that we just created, like so. Finally, after a space, type --install. So what we're doing here is invoking the mongod.exe or the Mongo daemon, and we're asking it to take this config file and use this to install MongoDB as a service within the service controller. Once you are done with this, to start MongoDB, type net start MongoDB like so and press enter. And if everything went well, you should see this message which says the MongoDB service was started successfully. Again, if you do not open the command prompt in admin mode, chances are that this might fail. Now to stop the service, simply type net stop MongoDB and this will stop the service. Let's keep MongoDB running for now, so I'll just start it up again. Now, you can interact with MongoDB using Node.js or other programming platforms and languages, but MongoDB itself comes with an interactive tool called Mongo Shell, which provides a command line interface to play around with databases. This tool is invoked by typing Mongo on the prompt. At this stage, if you try doing this, you're likely to get this error. This just means that our MongoDB's bin folder, which contains the Mongo executable, is not available in our system's path environment variable. So go into your system properties panel. I'm running Windows 10, so I can right click on the Windows button here to go to the system panel, from where I can click on the advanced system settings button to access the system properties panel like so. On this panel, click on environment variables button, and then in the system variables section, scroll down and double click on the path variable entry. Now in this long string that you have here, put a semicolon at the end if there wasn't any, and then type in the entire path to your MongoDB's installation folder, including the bin folder at the end. Click OK and finish this process. Now open a new command prompt window. And if you now type Mongo and press enter, you should be able to see the MongoDB shell. We'll learn more about this in an upcoming lecture.